Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? Well, with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills. Wait, did I say job title yet? Get started today and see how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
Do not adjust your digital device. What you are about to see and hear may shock and appall you. Join our hosts as they encounter countless thrills, spills, chills, and hilarity as they explore the very weirdest in pop culture. The following media is so strange, so beyond the scope of what is normal, it will make you ask the question, why does this exist? Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Why Does This Exist? I'm Chris.
And I'm Rob.
And today we're going to be talking about a TV show that you have definitely heard of if you are not also a huge fan of.
Well, you've heard of it if we've listened to our podcast before, because we've definitely mentioned it on the podcast before.
Yes. We are talking about Curb Your Enthusiasm, in case you haven't guessed, which we gave you no clues. So good for you if you did, besides, the title of the episode. We will try not to do ums and buts or likes or any of those flavor words so that we can provide a better experience for you, for all the people who've called us out on that.
Yeah.
1, thank you. 2, shut up. We appreciate your concerns. If you really want to help, give us money. All of the links are at the bottom. We appreciate that as well. So let's get on with it. You are now about to witness the true strength of street knowledge from a ragtag group of rogues. So let's get on with the goddamn show. Take it away, Rob.
The
unindoctrinated, what is this thing?
Well, like I said before, we had talked about Curb a little bit on the Seinfeld episode. I'm pretty sure, because of course,
did. How could you not mention one without the other?
Right, exactly. You can't talk about Seinfeld without mentioning Curb, because of course Seinfeld was written and created by Larry David along with Jerry Seinfeld. And essentially, Curb Your Enthusiasm is just like Seinfeld 2.0, if you want to call it that.
Basically, it's Seinfeld uncensored if it's just George.
Yes. Yeah, it was Seinfeld with just George and on a premium network where you could curse.
Yeah.
But very much like the same exact situations in Seinfeld. Larry is exactly George. Actually, I think he actually described the show Curb Your Enthusiasm as it's obviously a fictionalized version of him. He's not as bad as he is on the show as he's in real life. And
that's what he says.
Well, yeah, I've never met Larry David. Our friend Ian met Larry David, I think, at a freaking St. Vitus show or something.
Something like that.
It was some kind of doom metal show or something that Larry David was just there.
I feel like I don't know if he would even, it doesn't even seem like he would like that music.
Apparently he does.
But, okay, well, good for him.
But we've never met Larry.
No, there is also a band called Larry Davehead where the logo is Larry David. It's an amalgam of Larry David and the Motorhead mascot Snaggletooth.
Oh my god!
I believe it's grindcore that is themed to Curb Your Enthusiasm.
I mean, that tracks. That sounds like a grindcore band.
Yeah, so check those guys out if they still exist.
Yeah. But Larry has said that apparently his character of Larry David in Curb is him if he had no like social graces at all and was just a complete douchebag. That would be him. I guess luckily he's got some more sense than his character does.
I
So
suppose. I feel like he would have to if he has gotten to be as successful as he is, he would
yeah,
have to.
yeah,
But you and I both know many people who are just like Larry David on
yeah,
the curb in real life, and they have no morals. They
no,
have everything is they have no knowledge that they're being the asshole,
yeah. The
and
basic,
somehow everybody else is the problem, which is great. But
yeah.
there are real people like this, and
Oh yeah.
I think that's why the show is so beloved and so funny. Similar to
Hmm.
Seinfeld, there are real people like this.
Yes.
The
It,
characters that these people play on the show, they are real people. There are real people. Your next door neighbor is possibly Larry.
I think that the fact that he also bases the character on himself kind of adds to that, you know? Um,
It's probably, I mean, it is obviously an extension of himself.
yes.
And like in pro wrestling, the characters that are extensions of yourself or you turned up to 11, those are the ones that get over the most.
Yeah.
And that's obviously the case here.
Yeah. So Larry is, well, like I said, plays a fictionalized version of himself in a post Seinfeld world, where he's basically retired now, living off his royalties from Seinfeld, which were substantial, and trying to find meaning in his life because he's basically not doing anything anymore but play golf and lives the dream of just not having a job but also not having to worry about money to pay rent and all that because you have infinite money.
Yeah.
So, and he gets into all these awkward situations with people he knows. And I like the way they kind of blend in celebrities playing themselves, but also celebrities making cameo appearances as characters on the show, that are just
But
characters.
I wonder if the characters are also extensions of themselves.
I kind of
I
get that a little bit
I
because,
wouldn't be surprised if some of it is and some of it isn't.
well, also the fact that there's no scripts. It's basically all improvised, and Larry comes up with a outline of what the episode's supposed to be about, but all the dialogue is all
No,
improv.
there are. I th- aren't the arguments improv, but there is a regular script.
Well, from what I understand, from what I read, is that all the dialogue is improv. There's no scripted dialogue. There's a basic outline of what they have to topics they have to cover and stuff, but there's no actual script for most of the episodes.
Really,
Yeah.
I would think that there is a general script, and then there are sections of the script where it is improvised, where
Yeah.
there is no dialogue.
I
Like
would imagine that maybe
almost
there
a
is some
road.
scripted dialogue, but it's very, rare. It's only for specific situations where they
I
need
would
to cover something.
I would say it's I would say there are probably scripts just to get from point A to point B,
Hmm.
but point B to point C is just do what you want.
Yeah, that could be.
Almost as if the blueprint of a it's almost a blueprint of a script, if you will,
Yeah,
or
I
a
mean,
blueprint of a full script.
well, we talked about on Always Sunny in Philadelphia that a lot of the dialogue is also improvised on that show. So I think that could be the same here, where
Right.
they have a basic premise of what they want the episode to be. They know what they have to talk about, but they're not kind of restricted to an exact wording.
Right.
Larry lets them kind of say what they would in a real life situation. So it almost kind of feels like a reality show following Larry David, even though it's not. It's just a regular like situational comedy.
Hmm. So
But
maybe the setup lines are there, and then the rest of it just goes
yeah, yeah, that could be.
almost like a bullet point thing, like you
Yeah,
said.
but so Larry gets into all kinds of hijinks with all these celebrities that he knows. He's friends with Ted Danson and his wife Mary Steenburgen, and they're actually married in real life. And So they appear on the show. One of his best friends is Richard Lewis, a stand-up comedian, Richard Lewis.
Who passed away last year while they
Yeah.
were airing Curb Your Enthusiasm last season.
Then you also have.
He might be an extension of himself.
I think he
on
is
the show. I think that he is too, or
I
was
think
rather.
for sure that the characters that play the fictionalized versions of themselves are extensions of who they really are.
Yes. But also they have some that are just playing characters. You had
Jeff Garlin, who plays Jeff Green, who's Larry's manager.
Yes, both of all of the Funkhausers are playing the Funkhauser characters.
Also, all the characters are generally share the first name with their real life self. So Cheryl Hines plays Cheryl David, Larry's wife in the first few seasons, and then they get divorced.
But then she ends up dating Ted Danson.
Yes.
Which is funny.
Yeah. Cheryl Hines, who is actually RFK Jr.'s wife in real life.
It's so weird.
It's yeah.
And that's one of those things. Her being married to him is one of those things that somehow stayed under the radar the entire time until a month ago.
Yeah.
Pretty much once Trump took office, people started to realize that Cheryl Hines is married to RFK.
Man, they could have had a really great plot of Cheryl marrying RFK on Curb. And Larry's reaction to that. I think that would have been hilarious. I'm surprised they didn't go with that.
Oh, I could see Susie smugly going up to Larry and saying, "Have you heard about Cheryl?" "No, why? What's going on with Cheryl?" "She's marrying a senator." "What do you mean she's marrying a senator?" "She's marrying a I'm sorry, well, he's not a senator, but well, okay, he's not really a senator, but she's marrying a Kennedy. She's marrying a Kennedy. She's marrying a Kennedy. And you know what? They've got way more money than your fucking broke ass, Larry." And then there'd be a whole episode. Then there'd be a whole thing back and forth in the car or on the golf course about whether or not it's an upgrade to Larry. And then they'd meet him, and they'd probably have a thing about his
voice.
speech and his voice.
Larry would definitely have something about his voice.
He would have to say it. He would nitpick with Cheryl, and he would just say something like, "So when you two have sex, does he sound like that? Is he?" Is it normal when he finishes? What happens? What happens there? There would be just strange questions, or oh my god, anything that RFK was in the news for of just his weird antics would have been perfect throughout the whole season. So just reading about the bear thing, and then I don't even know at the end of the show, at the end of the season, do they get married on the show, or does she call it off because because he keeps getting excessively weirder?
I don't
like in real life.
Yeah.
Well,
she married him in real life, so I guess she would marry him on the show, despite the weirdness. Maybe the weirdness somehow makes her more attracted to him based on how not weird Larry is. Larry's just an asshole, basically. He's not a weird person.
I was thinking that, or she would just have this attraction to weird people, and she wouldn't realize that that's what it was.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with it had nothing to do with the personality or the money. They just had to be very weird in their own way.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would love to see the exchange between them about this. Now I secretly want them to just do a new season just for this.
Just for this plot point. Yeah. Well, they'd have to somehow change the fact that Cheryl ends up She does eventually break up with Ted Danson too, doesn't she?
Yeah, because she sleeps with Larry again.
Right. Right.
Spoiler for those who have not watched the show, but if you haven't watched the goddamn show, you should just turn this show off and start watching that show. And if you don't want to pay for Max because, I have Paramount and I have Netflix and I have Hulu, well, cut one and watch this.
It's on Max.
Is one of the better ones anyway.
Max is really one of the better ones because it's got all the WB shit. So if you're into DC, Max is the one to have because it's got all the old DC shows.
And any HBO thing. In terms of catalog, Max is one of the best streaming services. In terms of an app, it is shitty.
Yeah, the app sucks, but
the app is garbage. Yes. All David Zaslav knows how to do is lose money.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Did you see the rebranding it again?
Oh, get the fuck out of here. No.
It's not like a full rebrand, but they're changing the color scheme to like black and white instead of like the bluish whatever color it is. Yeah.
Why?
Because apparently you haven't heard this whole theory how everything is losing color.
God.
The whole color palette is gone. Like everything is now just gray or black or white or shades of different grays and stuff like that. There's no more color anymore. And
what?
It's an actual like problem that's happening in modern society is that we've gotten rid of color.
What do you mean? We've gotten rid of color? Like
eyesight? No.
Or just color? Like on screens and things.
Yes.
Or hues?
And the color of products. So if you go outside and look at cars, all the cars now, all the modern cars, all the popular colors are gray, black, white, like different shades of gray, very muted neutral tones. There's no color anymore. There's some cars that have color because that's not, they have like orange cars and red cars, but mostly cars are shades of gray or black now or white.
That's because that's how people feel on the inside.
Yeah, well, they're saying that all of the gray scale colors that we're seeing now and all the products and modern architecture and all this is actually making people depressed because we're supposed to see colors. The only thing that they'll never get rid of is blue because they can't change the color of the sky. So you're always going to see blue, and you'll always see blue in products because it reminds people of the sky, and they're never going to change the color of the sky. But pretty much everything that they can make gray or black or white, they're going to do.
It's because people are depressed to begin with, and we live in a very bleak society, in a very bleak world.
That's the postmodern freaking ideal, I guess. Everything's got to be brutalist architecture and only grays and white and black.
No. This is not what people want. This is just what's there. This is how they perceive the world. Just make it better.
But people are actively against colors now because if you look at in the 70s when things were made of more like wooden things, there was wood, so you had like a lot of browns and earth tones.
Well, what's wrong with those? I like them.
Well, people think they're ugly now. No one paints their house brown or beige anymore.
Well, just leave the natural colors. I like the natural colors. Just put some lacquer on it.
They're not. Well, first of all, no one lives in a log cabin, so no matter what, you're going to have sheetrock that needs to be painted.
Yeah, which is
unless you actually live in a log cabin, which then if you paint the friggin' walls gray at that point, you're just an idiot. Because why would you do that? When you have nice log cabin walls.
Oh well, so it's because we suck. Okay, great.
Yep.
Check that box. Good. Anyway, no. Now that you mention it, I have noticed more gray gunmetal cars.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, that sucks. Anyway, back to Curb Your Enthusiasm, and speaking of things that don't suck. Well, so Curb has been going on since '99. Actually, I didn't even realize that it was going on as that long as it has, but. It finally ended with 12 seasons, which there were a few times where they had planned to end it, or they ended it without, or they thought that they had ended it, So you'll see gaps in between, like season 8. There between season 8 and 9, there were about 6 years before they did that, and then between 9 and 10, there was a 3 year gap, and et cetera. And then you have a third year gap between season 11 and season 12. So I feel like there's been a few times where Larry David has just decided, this show's probably done. I don't really need to
Yeah.
do another season. And then HBO just shows up and gives him a bunch of money and says, do another season. And
Yeah.
he just says, yeah, okay. And
Well, I'm sure he's
the
getting
way that
paid
he does.
handsomely for the.
Oh, I'm sure he is. I'm sure he and everybody else is. I mean, the other brains of this operation is Larry Charles,
Hmm.
who another guy from Brooklyn, New York. Um, he was a staff writer on sitcom for the first 5 seasons, and he also did the documentary Religulous,
Oh,
as
okay.
well as he also did Sacha Baron Cohen's Borat, Bruno, the Dictator stuff.
Oh,
So
wow.
he's done a bunch of things, but he's also Larry David's right hand man on Curb Your Enthusiasm. So he's been doing this stuff for the longest time,
Hmm.
and he's done, arguably some of Seinfeld's most memorable episodes.
Yeah.
So
Alec
he's
Berg, also who worked on Seinfeld, also works on Curb.
yes, he does.
So
So
it's a lot of the same, and a lot of the same writers and staff that worked on Seinfeld. So the similarity to Seinfeld is uncanny. I mean, it's
right.
and it's funny because after watching Curb, when I go back and watch Seinfeld, I can clearly see the dialogue that was written by Larry David.
Mhm.
There's like this flavor to it. I'm like, that's a Larry David.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because obviously his writing style comes out in Curb because it's his show, and you can really see it in Seinfeld. If you watch Curb, like for a couple episodes of Curb, and then watch an episode of Seinfeld, especially like the earlier episodes, like when he was obviously still writing for the show because he left after season 7. But watch like a season 4 Seinfeld, and you could really like the Larry David writing is there. You could see it. It's I'm like watching it and I'm like, oh yeah, that's definitely a Larry David right there.
For sure. And even the episodes where Larry gets after Larry gets divorced and the family moves in, well, this they're people who lost their homes in Katrina. They're
Hmm.
black people known as whose last name is the Blacks, and he's perplexed by this, and he keeps telling them, he's like, "This is like my name would if my name was Larry Jew. Do you understand how bizarre this is?" And then they just look at him like this guy's an idiot, which pretty
Yeah,
much everybody does anyway.
yeah.
And we get the lovely Loretta, who ends up becoming a love interest later on. Auntie Ray, who just is just the victim of just terrible, unfortunate circumstances involving Larry.
Hmm.
And then we get the lovely JB Smoove, who pretty much broke through into the mainstream with this show
Hmm.
as Leon. And Leon is one of my favorite characters on the show because he's just ridiculous. I would not be surprised if his lines are 100% improv
Hmm.
because he's just so goddamn funny.
Yeah.
And it's funny because he also doesn't really do anything. He just kind of leeches off of Larry, but Larry kind of likes it
Hmm.
because they have very similar views on things. And after that season, like after things dissolve between Larry and Loretta, the others leave and they go to wherever they're gonna do. They get written off the show, but Leon stays and they keep him, and he just lives in the guest house, and he just kind of hangs out and just helps Larry out with his dating life. And he pretty much just gives strange advice to all of Larry's friends. And Leon is probably one of the Leon's one of the best characters that they put in the show, and he came in late, and I think he helped
Hmm.
keep Curb. Not that I think that Curb ever was really starting to lose any steam, but I think that he was this. He became this extra factor that just added another dimension to the show.
Hmm.
Because yeah, you have the regular cast of characters, but there was almost a freshness that you needed, and JB Smoove ends up filling that void, especially after Marty Funkhauser, the actor who played him, ends up passing away.
Yeah.
Uh, who was Bob
Bob
Einstein, who
Einstein. Yeah.
he's also not. He also is playing a he's just playing a regular character, but not a fictionalized version of himself.
Yeah.
But
He actually had a hilarious appearance on Norm Macdonald's podcast back in the day, and it was
really,
yeah.
then
I
I'd have to
mean,
find
you know,
that.
you it's yeah. He I don't obviously it's just Bob Einstein, Norm Macdonald live. I think, and you'll find it.
Hmm.
I love Norm's podcast. It was like his delivery on jokes and just the way he like makes people laugh. It was just classic. I'm actually surprised he was never on Curb or anything.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I am surprised that he was never on there. Well, they at least had Shaq. I'm glad they had Shaq.
Because I imagine Larry probably knew Norm Macdonald because they were both on SNL. I mean, Larry was on a little earlier. I think he was on in the 80s, obviously before Seinfeld. And Norm didn't get there until the early 90s. But
I'm sure they crossed paths.
yeah, they must have.
You know, and
I feel like the stand up comedy scene is a very tight knit community.
I hope so.
That's why I think you see a lot of stand up comics on Curb because Larry was friends with them or knew them somehow and wanted to incorporate them into the show.
Yeah, I could see that. I hope that that's the case
Yeah,
because it's always good to see a community.
yeah. So Curb had some pretty famous arcs. Notably season 4, when Mel Brooks offers Larry a role in The Producers, and
That's actually my favorite arc, besides the Spite Store, which we'll get to.
then there's season 7, which was the Seinfeld reunion arc, or this is after Larry and Cheryl have broken up, and Larry's trying to win back Cheryl. So to do that, he accepts an offer from NBC to make a Seinfeld reunion and cast Cheryl as George's ex-wife. um, and it's hilarious because at one point Jason Alexander gets pissed off about all the changes that Larry is trying to make, or basically, I imagine it's very similar to how George was in in the Jerry show in Seinfeld, where he's trying to coach the actors and they get pissed off. It's kind of like the same writing. Again, Larry David jokes. History repeats itself.
But
And
also, Cheryl becomes attracted to Jason Alexander
yes,
because he's putting on the George, and
yes,
Larry is trying to explain to Cheryl that this is him, that she's
yeah,
interested in him.
yeah. And so George leaves, ends up. I forget it. Does Larry fire Jason Alexander, or Jason Alexander just gets pissed off and quits?
I think he tries to fire him, and then he just gets mad and quits anyway. I
Right.
haven't seen it in a while. This arc.
Yeah. So then Larry tries to play George and is absolutely awful. He's just being a parody of George, which is it's fucking hilarious. It's classic. The writing on that is just so funny.
Yeah. Other other notable arcs, like we said, the introduction of the blacks who go to live with the Davids, and we end up getting JB Smoove. We also end up and there's also the producers, where just the whole season is Larry gets paired up with David Schwimmer to be in the producers
Yeah.
to go on Broadway, and the whole time they're meeting, they're doing the show, and all of these other things happen,
Hmm.
and just in that whole time, and then him and David Schwimmer can't stand each other.
Mm-hmm.
So they end up doing the producers. Larry screws it up, and people end up loving all of the improvisational dumb like crap that he ends up pulling out of his ass.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Mel Brooks and his wife are loving that Larry screwed up the play, because it turns out that they intentionally did the plot of the producers to the Broadway show producers in hopes that it would close. So they ended up, and the two of them look at each other and they echo similar lines from the producers where they say, "How did this happen? How was this a hit?
Mm-hmm.
We got the worst actors. We put them together. They screwed up the play, and we're getting rave reviews. We're doomed. We have to keep doing this." So, like, they're trying to escape the curse of the producers essentially,
Mm-hmm.
and the curse continues.
Yeah.
We also, and another one which is one of my favorites too is the Spite Store,
Mm.
where Larry David gets into it with this guy Mocha Joe who bans him from his coffee shop,
Yeah.
and Larry devotes the entire season to opening up a Spite Store next door that just charges that charges much lower prices, and for all intents and purposes a better coffee shop,
Yeah.
only so that they can put him out of business.
Mm-hmm.
And then other celebrities start to pick up on this, and they start opening Spite stores, and they end up not really wanting to do the thing once
Mm-hmm.
the other store went out of business. They're no longer trying to do the services. And then Larry runs into these problems of his own making. Like, he's trying to get a watch repaired for somebody. So he goes to the watch guy that he's gone to for however many years. And that guy got put out of business by Mila Kunis, who opened up a Spite jewelry store next door to him, and she doesn't want to fix the watch, so she tells him to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
So it's
One of my
what kind of Spite store would you do? Just curious.
me personally.
Yeah, what kind of a Spite store
Well,
would you do?
I
What
always had.
stores do you have beefs with?
Well, listen, living after working in retail for many years, I always had the dream of just opening a store, and I don't know what specifically it would be, maybe like a convenience store or something, but a store where the prices were so low that people kept coming back, but I could treat them like assholes, you know? Because it's always the dream of someone working in retail to actually give it back to the customers that are douchebags. And I would love to own a store where people kept coming back because I had such great prices, but I didn't have to be nice to them, you know? I could treat them kind of like there's that restaurant chain, what's it called? It's like Dick's Last Stand or something like that.
I don't remember what it's called. Tony's
Basically,
written about
the
this.
waiters and waitresses are allowed to treat you like shit, and they make fun of you the whole time.
It's in Maryland, right?
It's all over the place. I saw one when I was in Texas,
Yeah, where they
like Dick's
insult
Last
you.
Stand or something.
Dick's Last Resort.
Oh yeah,
That's what it is.
but yeah, something like that where I can just yell at the customers and be
There's
like,
spin-off ones too, like Karen's Diner, Rude Staff, and Great Burgers.
"Oh yeah,
There's more of them, but Dick's Last Resort is the original.
yeah." So my beef is with the general public.
So you would have a Spite Bodega?
Yeah,
Okay. I kind of
Yeah.
like that. That's a good band name, Spite Bodega.
Spite Boutique.
Yeah, I would have I would, we were just talking about this too, me and the missus. She decided that she would do a Spite trading card game to put Magic out of business because she hates it, because I talk about it too much.
Good
And
luck.
she would, yeah. I told the minute that she said that, I was like, "Oh, you mean Hearthstone or Flesh and Blood? They basically are Spite trading card games. There's basically Spite Magic."
There's been a million card games that tried to bring down Magic, but no one has. No
No,
one has. Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, no one can.
no, you just can't have a Spite card game.
You cannot kill the magic. The
Sadly,
magic will live on.
yes.
Yu-Gi-Oh tried to kill the magic.
But it failed.
Yeah.
And it was thrown to the ground.
Yes. Yeah, so that I mean, I applaud her efforts, but good luck.
I would do a spite pizzeria.
That seems fair. That seems like some...
I worked at a pizzeria when I was 19 through 20. So for a couple years. And I mean, we really just did whatever the hell we wanted anyway.
Who would you be your hate? Who would you be your competition that you're trying to put out of business?
There was another pizzeria up the street that was trying to put us out of business, but we were taking their customers. But
nice.
Now neither place exists, I think. Or, well, the place that I worked at doesn't exist because, well, the owner, we won't get into that, but, well, there were problems. And then the other one, was a successful, I think they had 2 or 3 of them, but the owner sold the business to somebody, and I don't know what it is anymore.
Yeah.
I haven't gone to that old neighborhood in years now, thankfully. So I have no idea.
Yeah.
But I don't know what pizza place I don't know if there's a pizza place I would want to put out well, actually, no, that's not true. Bella Roma up the street, I would put their ass out of business in a heartbeat because those people, no, these people have it common. Listen, I went to a pre-release, like, bringing it back to the magic. I went to a pre-release one time, and I was in a rush, and I was getting out of the pizzeria, and I leave, I go, it was raining and all these things. I go down to the card store. I go to pay for the pre-release with my credit card. The credit card is not there. So I'm thinking, oh no, I must have dropped it when I got on the bus, or maybe it's just not here, whatever it is. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever, it's not a big deal. I go do my pre-release. I have fun. I wake up the next day and I retrace my steps, and then I remember, oh, I had pizza before this. Let me go to Bella Roma and see what the hell happened. See if maybe they have my card. So I go into the pizza place, and the same lady is there too, and I have a Curb Your Enthusiasm like moment with them, and I say, "Hi, did you see a credit card yesterday? Just a Capital One card. It was silver. Did you see that yesterday? Ah, yes, I did. I did see it. Oh, okay, great. That's my credit card. I can, was it for, this person's name? Yes, it was for that person. Okay, great. Can you go get it? Do you have it in a box somewhere or anything like that? I threw it out. What do you mean you threw it out? I threw it out. Why would you do that? Well, it was 10 o'clock. Nobody came back to it. Nobody came back. So I threw it in the garbage. I said, why would you throw it in the garbage? It wasn't even 24 hours. Even if you leave your credit card at a bar, they will charge you like an asshole tax, but you could still go back to the bar the next day and they will give you your credit card back, but you might have like a $50 charge on it just because, hey, stupid, don't do this again. We're not responsible for your credit cards. Don't leave it here, which is fair. This freaking lady just decided to just throw away my credit card just because I didn't come back by closing time. If I had left it there a week, if nothing had happened there after a week, even 2 or 3 days, even a full 24 hours, nobody came back the following day, okay, I guess we'll throw it away.
Mm-hmm.
Now, closing time, this credit, no one claimed this. Not like they didn't realize that it's gone. Okay, bye. And I just said, are you freaking serious, lady? And I have never gone back to that place. Their pizza sucks anyway. So
there's your spite.
There's my spite. Yeah, I would open it right next to Bella Roma and put those buckers out of business.
There you go.
So that's my spite store. Anyway, if you've got a spite store, let us know in the comment. If you've got a spite story and the store that you would like to open, let us know in the comment section of the YouTubes or just email us and do all those things. Or maybe if you're gonna give us money, just you could tell us in the Discord server, or do any of those things. But yeah, that's what I would do.
Mm-hmm. Another one of my favorite arcs is when in season 2, Larry comes up with the idea to he's trying to come up with an idea for a new show, a new sitcom, because he's bored and wants to do something else. And he goes to Jason Alexander's house, and apparently Jason is pissed off because he keeps getting typecast as George Costanza characters, essentially. And so Larry comes up with the idea of having a show that Jason stars in where he plays an actor that keeps getting typecast for this great role that he was at one point. Basically, kind of doing
Have
like almost like
imitate life.
exactly. But then Jason Alexander ends up pissing off Larry because he keeps saying how George is like a putz and an idiot, and he was like the butt of all the jokes. And Larry based George off of him, so it's like Jason's almost like exactly he's insulting Larry in a way. So Larry gets pissed off and he brings the idea to Julia Louis-Dreyfus instead. Which obviously the Seinfeld cast makes sporadic appearances throughout the whole show besides just the reunion in season 7.
I do love that they did that in season 7. It's the only way that it's probably the only way that they agreed to do anything close to a Seinfeld reunion, and I also felt that was the best way to do it too, if you ever could.
Yeah, it was pretty funny, and it actually makes sense. They brought Seinfeld into like the more modern age, where George, the whole plot of it is that George is trying to win back his ex-wife, again, or imitating life, with Larry trying to win back Cheryl.
Well, I guess in this case, it's art imitating art, right?
I guess that's true. It's a really meta season.
Yes, it is.
But George actually, it's funny because they reference Bernie Madoff, which obviously that dates the show because that whole thing happened in, I don't even remember when that whole Bernie Madoff thing went down. That 2008, I think it was.
07, 08, 09 was when they finally really started figuring shit out.
Yeah. So George actually becomes rich because he designed an iPhone app called the iToilet. And there was this whole joke that George always knew what the best bathroom was no matter where you were in the city. So he made an iPhone app based off of that called the iToilet.
There's something similar to that. Well, I don't know if it's still a thing, but there's places I've pooped where you could tell other people which bathrooms are great.
That's basically the iToilet. That was the whole concept.
I don't know if that's still a real thing, but I was listening to a podcast maybe 10 years ago with it was it was called Talk and Shop. It was Doc Gallows and Carl Anderson's podcast. I don't know if they still do it, but they had Braun Strowman on and he was talking about the app.
That's hilarious.
It was a really funny episode.
Anyway, George makes millions of dollars off this app.
My friend used it and he gave my childhood home a very good rating.
Oh, there you go. Nice.
So just anybody, well, I guess
I don't know. People are breaking into your childhood home just to use the toilet.
That's fine. We don't live there anymore. And the guy who bought the place is an asshole, so I don't really give a shit.
Good. Let someone else shit in his
toilet. Yeah. I hope they break it.
So the hilarious thing is that George is finally successful. He makes millions of dollars off this app, but then loses it all because he puts all his money into Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme. And that's the whole joke. And there's so many points where he's talking about it. He's so mad about it. It's still, but it was just very classic Seinfeld. Also, the fact that Elaine is like looking at her BlackBerry and typing while she's talking to Jerry, and Jerry gets all pissed off. He's like, "Look, what's with the BlackBerry people?" So
I feel like Blackberries would have been perfect now because a lot of Gen Z and a lot of people are just sick of smartphones, so they just want the basics, but something durable and nice where they can check email.
Yeah.
I feel like Blackberries need a comeback.
Yeah, they were. I mean, I feel like everything a BlackBerry could do, a smartphone could do better though. That's the only problem.
Yeah,
You
but
know.
people don't. But people who are tired of just the screen overload and all of the extra apps that they don't need would love Blackberries. I would love a
That's
Blackberry, to
true.
be honest with you. I just need something to talk, text, and to check my email. I don't need any of the other bells and whistle bullshit.
Say I use too much of the bells and whistle bullshit. You know, I use Spotify on my phone. I use my phone for navigation, so I wouldn't be able to deal with it. I can't disconnect at this point. I'm dependent. I've become part of the Black Mirror.
I could find a way. How about you throw it out the window? That'll start. That's that'll get you that'll get you disconnected real quick.
That's true.
But yeah, there's a ton of excellent just storylines and arcs in Curb Your Enthusiasm, and I love how every season the thing is you could either choose to watch this show any random episode, or you could just start from any season. There yes there are some that cross over, like the first few seasons of him and Cheryl being together, and then
Yeah.
later seasons when they're not together. There's some things that just but for the most part, you could start at any season and it really wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
That's probably what I love about the show so much is that I don't have to start if I want to rewatch it, I don't have to watch one I don't have to start from scratch. I can just pick any season and just stick to that season and then I'm done.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Also, it saved a man's life. Everybody who's a fan of Curb knows this, but for the unindoctrinated again, Curb Your Enthusiasm footage saved a man's life,
Mm-hmm.
and it's incredible. There's a documentary called Long Shot where it's about this guy who was the this poor freaking guy. His this man Juan Catalan was arrested for the murder of a lady named Martha Pueblo in Los Angeles County, and he was he was a witness at a hearing and everything, and then police arrested him, and they claimed that based on his facial structure, another witness described him, which was not true,
Mm-hmm.
and they tried to put this man in jail. Meanwhile, the guy wasn't even around at the time of the woman's murder. The guy was at Dodger Stadium catching a baseball game with his daughter, I believe.
Yes.
And this whole documentary is just about how this guy got in about well, first of all, it's about police intimidation tactics and predatory practices that they use to pressure innocent people into confessions
Mm-hmm.
just so that they can make their numbers look good and they really don't care. Also, racial profiling and all kinds of things like that about how that gets into it. The disgraced officers were found out that they really didn't give a shit and they didn't try very hard and
Mm-hmm.
they just tried to get the first guy that matched that looked like he could match the description and they like just oh, okay, let's just get the first Spanish guy we see and
Yeah.
we'll just pressure him into a conviction and they
Well, it's the same stuff that happened during the witch trials. People were
right.
tortured into confessing that they were witches because they just wanted to like not be tortured anymore.
Yes, thank you. It was this whole witch hunt thing. The
Mm-hmm.
disgraced officers were fired later on, but they were ready to put this guy in jail, and there happened to be, and he happened to know that they were filming a TV show at that time, the day that he went into Dodger Stadium. So there were
Mm-hmm.
sections blocked off and things like that, and he ended up going into the and he knew because he accidentally went into the wrong section and they told him, "Hey, you have to go out there. You have to go back. We're filming." And he turned out to be in, or they needed him for extras, and they upgraded his seat. It was one of those things. He either wound up in the wrong section, or they upgraded his seats because they were filming, so they needed to fill out the section that they blocked off
Mm-hmm.
and he remembered that he was used in that, so they ended up figuring out what TV shows were recorded in Dodger Stadium that season, and they got Larry David on the phone. They just checked the Curb Your Enthusiasm episode, which that episode is The Surrogate, which I believe is season 4, episode 7.
Mm-hmm.
They ended up they end up getting them to review the footage, and they just told Larry, "Hey, listen, we've got this guy who claims that on he was an extra in this episode when you filmed in Dodger Stadium, and we believe that he is innocent, and we need to prove his alibi. So can you please just send us all of the footage that you can gather from that show, from that day?" And they were able to find him, and
Mm-hmm.
he got off, and he also sued and got a bunch of money. He sued the police department, and he got a
Well,
bunch of money, which
rightfully so.
very rightfully so. Good for this man. Good for Juan. But just, pun intended, this one in a million freaking thing ends up saving this guy's life. And I believe they eventually convicted the right guy.
Mm-hmm.
Hope, but yeah, police were fired who did, like, bad police were fired, and they got the right guy. The innocent guy, sued, made a bunch of money, proved his innocence, and was a free man. And now, I guess if he wanted to, he could probably murder whoever he wants because of double jeopardy. But I hope that
That's not how
doesn't
that
happen.
works. No.
That's not how that works? Okay. Well,
No.
then don't do it. Don't do it, Juan. Don't do it.
Double jeopardy just means you can't be tried for the same crime twice. So if you rob a bank and are acquitted, and then say as you're walking out the courthouse, "Oh, I actually did rob the bank," they can't bring you back into the courthouse and retry you for that. You've already been acquitted. So that's how double jeopardy works.
Okay, but if you rob a different bank, then
Yes,
you can. Okay.
Yeah, that's a new crime.
Okay, so don't do it, Juan. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Forget what I said. I said nothing. Just go live your fun, happy, normal life.
Disclaimer: we cannot provide legal advice on this show.
No,
We're not
we
lawyers.
can't. No, we're not lawyers, and we do not provide legal advice. No, none of those things. And Steve retired, and Larry.
Or illegal advice.
No, we cannot provide any advice. In fact, I didn't even say anything that's from 15 minutes ago. Let it be stricken from the record that I did not say any of those things for the last 5 minutes. No, that was not me. That was AI. Someone has hacked into our mainframe and made it seem like I said things that I certainly did not say.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, you can watch the movie Long Shot for the full details. But it's I don't know if it's still on Netflix, but I had seen it on Netflix. But yeah, I also like how on other episodes, I also like how in the season 5 finale, the end, the whole premise of the season is that Richard Lewis needs a kidney, and subsequently Larry also believes that he was adopted the entire season. So in this episode, he ends up meeting the parents that he thought were his real parents, and because they're Catholic, he ends up learning about God and Jesus and Bibles and everything like that, and he gets into the Catholic lifestyle. So he then decides that he will give Richard Lewis a kidney, when the whole rest of the season he was not going to. So he ends up doing the thing. And before that, he finds, while he's on his way to the operation, the person who was helping find out who his biological parents are finds out that he made a mistake, and those people weren't his parents, and that the parents that he thought adopted him have always been his real parents. So he then changes his mind again, and he doesn't want to give him the kidney anymore, but it's too late. So he has the operation, and then he dies as a result, and he goes to heaven, finds out that Marilyn Monroe is waiting for him, and he meets his guides, played by Dustin Hoffman, and I forget who else. And they're walking him through heaven, and they're explaining everything. And he gets into an argument with the guy over I forget what, but he gets into an argument with one of the guides,
Mm-hmm.
and they just get fed up with him, so they send him back to Earth because heaven doesn't want to deal with him.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have 7 more seasons of this. But
Yeah.
I like how the other fun thing is that the whole season, it's a slow burn. The big, like, whatever it is that starts in season 1, it's a slow burn, and it goes all the way, and it plays out over the last season, and you get the punchline at the very end, and Larry always gets his comeuppance.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I think that's what
Yeah.
also makes the show so satisfying.
Yeah. Much
Is
like
that
the Seinfeld characters, basically. They
yes.
always get their comeuppance at the end.
Yes, and speaking of that, they also ended it in an interesting way, which was a callback to the Seinfeld finale too,
Mm-hmm.
where the whole season Larry thought that he was going to go to jail, and he was awaiting a trial and everything, and then the last episode there's a trial, and he gets convicted, and they almost reenact the entire Seinfeld finale
That's hilarious.
where everyone he has ever wronged shows up to testify in court and say what an asshole he is.
Mm-hmm.
And the judge does convict him, and he's ready to just have the exact same finale. And then it turns out that Jerry just bails him out, and
Yeah.
he just goes and he walks off, and he says, "Thank you so much for doing that. Why'd you do that?" And he's like, "I think we." And there's like that tongue in cheek meta joke where he's like, "I think we learned the first time that wasn't the right ending." So and then they just walk off and have like a happy thing.
Yeah.
Um, so it's the one time he doesn't really get his comeuppance, but it's fitting.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they actually had planned on ending that a couple of seasons earlier. There was an during the finale, they shot two endings. One of which where where Larry David would fall into a pool and drown, and they chose not to. They chose not to use that. See, they chose not to use that ending, but they did too. Which one was the ending they used, and the other one was an ending where Larry died in the season
Mm-hmm.
finale, and they, for whatever reason, they decided not to use it. They decided not to go with it, and they did a couple more seasons out of it.
Yeah. Well, I'm
But
sure Larry got offered a lot of money to keep going. That's why.
probably,
Because I
because
mean, Curb is one of HBO's most successful shows.
I'm
I think
sure.
it's probably their longest running show because it started in '99, I think, was the pilot, and went all the way up to 2024. So it's probably their longest running show, except for maybe like something like Bill Maher, or something.
Actually, it was the season 11 finale, so they went for one more. They ended up doing the final season after that,
Mm-hmm.
but they were ready to hang it up. But the original one is that he drowns, and then they ended up just not doing it. But they always treated every season as a potential finale too, and that's kind of why you can just pick from any season.
Yeah.
Because every season they pretty much they pretty much did the show as if this was the last season anyway. So, which I appreciate because they tie up all the loose ends at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So that just in case it actually was the last season ever, nobody would be disappointed because it ended the same way.
Yeah.
But do we have anything else for Curb Your Enthusiasm?
No, I think that's
The
it.
life-saving show. It saves people. It gets people off of convictions. It makes people laugh, and it's one of the longest-running shows on HBO. And it's a great time. And I also appreciate the timing of it because it filled a Seinfeldless void.
Yes.
So anyone who really wanted anyone who wished that they had more Seinfeld episodes or new episodes, you could pretty much point them in the Curb Your Enthusiasm direction,
Mm-hmm.
and they're usually happy. But I mean, not everybody is. There's some people who they really just can't get into it, but they love Seinfeld, and that's okay. But there's also other people like our old drummer Roger who was okay with Curb, preferred Always Sunny, but just wasn't into Seinfeld.
Yeah.
So it's definitely that kind of show. But I do, and I think the other funny thing is a lot of the points that Larry is trying to make with people when he's being an asshole on the show. I agree with a lot of those arguments that he gets into. I take Larry's side on a lot of those arguments.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I know that I'm an asshole, but other people might not realize that they're an asshole.
Well, I think the point of the show is that, yeah, Larry has no social graces, and he could be quite an asshole, but the people that he interacts with are also pretty much assholes too.
Yes.
So, like, the awkward situations happen because it's both ends. It's an immovable force meeting an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object of
Right.
awkward.
Everyone is very stubborn on the show.
Yeah. Oh, I wanted to mention too before we stop that the Curb Your Enthusiasm theme has become a internet meme, basically,
I bet.
where any awkward situation or self own or cringy thing, now oftentimes they'll play the Curb theme over it, because that theme of Curb is always ends with Larry, getting an egg on his head, basically. So it works perfectly for real life too.
I mean, it really does. Sometimes I'll put it on when my dad is walking, and my brother and I will crack up. He also has a very particular face when things don't go his way, and it's fucking priceless.
Mm.
So, yeah, you could pretty much use that. I mean, there's some people who I've met where they claim that that is their theme song because nothing ever seems to go their way, no matter how good it looks like it's going to go on the in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, what a wonderful show.
Yep. It's a good one.
Yep. All right. That concludes this episode, everybody. We hope you enjoyed yourself, and if not, well, tough shit. You chose to listen to this. There's nothing I can do at this point.
Now they're going to sue us for stealing their time.
No, you can't sue for that yet. So
just wait. This will
yeah,
be a landmark Supreme Court case.
Great. Well, listen, in the court of in the court of us versus your bullshit, I'd like to think that we come ahead.
I hope so.
But who the hell knows? Maybe we do, maybe we don't. Just try not to.
Maybe we end up like Seinfeld in jail.
Yeah, we'll be at the hearing, and all the people that we pissed off over the course of our lives will just show up that day.
Testify.
Yeah. Well, that'd be an interesting way to go. I hope it doesn't, but
yeah,
that would be fine. There's some people who I would be... Honestly, there's some people who, if they showed up and they said what I did, I would be very surprised that they even knew that it was me.
Yeah.
But I've got some stories about some horrible things I've done to people. But they had it coming. If they didn't do what they did first, I would never have resorted to that tactic. You don't poke the koala.
Yeah.
You just don't. It's like Bob. It's like needling a STD-ridden koala that's already pissed off to begin with. You just don't. You don't do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's the show. I've been Chris.
And I've been Rob.
And remember, question everything.
Good night, everybody.